Captain G here, and I came down to the Mississippi Lake here a few minutes ago, and the whole lake here was just like glass. Makes for really poor sailing, but would have been excellent for kayaking. A sea-doo went by and stirred up a little bit of turbulence here, which is all you're seeing. A little bit of wind ripple there right now, but not much. If you hear any noise, there's another motorboat on the far side of the lake that these built-in mics on the camera may be picking up. But this is just a beautiful afternoon. Temperatures about 64 Fahrenheit in the shade. Not good weather for the Nordica 16 though. Well, this is the captain here. Mississippi Lake is winding down for the season, as you can see by the looks of this tree. And the Nordica 16 is on its trailer here. I had wanted to show a video of lowering the mast and hauling the boat out, but it seems like I'm always up against time constraints and doing a lot of things all on my own, and I'm finding it difficult to handle the camera and all the other stuff at the same time, so that's why that hasn't happened. But I hauled the boat out late last week. We're now the last week of October, and then we had a couple days of rain, so she's just been sitting here, and now I've got 2 or 3 days without rain, so I've got to get it all tarped up and ready for winter. I got the dinghy out Sunday afternoon, so it's on the trailer. I'm going to take the motor off shortly here and put it on the dolly. Then the boat I'll flip over and put on some old tires on top of the trailer, and that's how it spends the winter. Just in case you're interested, it is a rowing dinghy, and it has a keel on the bottom of it there. Try to sneak up a little bit closer to it. So it holds a straight line fairly well, and it's not really made for a motor. I've used everything from an electric trolling motor to a 4-horse 2-stroke Johnson, 2 cylinders, and this one is a Yamaha 8-horse 4-stroke twin cylinder. Well, I've got the motor off and onto its dolly. It's just a hand truck that I've put a board across, clamped on some years ago, and works ideally for the holding an outboard. This motor weighs about 84 pounds dry. It's getting heavier every year, I find, but it runs like a clock. This dinghy was built as a rowing dinghy. It's a 12-foot long, and it doesn't tip over well. It really is very stable, and so that makes it great. This motor mount was not on it because, like I said, it was a rowing dinghy. It's off a sailboat I had 40 years ago. It was called a Wildflower, and it was made with 2 layers of plastic with foam sandwiched in between them, and kind of a sunflower on steroids. But anyway, the hull gave up the ghost, and I salvaged all the parts off it, and was able to mount this motor mount on here, so it works fine in this application. I always leave the dinghy down at the lake with the drain plug out. A couple of locks on the motors. everything to try to discourage theft. And over the last couple of seasons, it's worked, thankfully. So in previous visits on the videos, I've talked to you about Mississippi Lake being very shallow and weedy, but how this Nordica 16 design works well in that. So here's why. It's got a full-length keel, very shallow draft, so it only draws about 18 inches to 2 feet of water maximum, depending on how we're loaded, and that's what allows it to slip into the shallower waters and also skip through the weeds. The only place where you have to worry about it catching weeds is if you're tacking in heavy weeds and the tiller is turned hard to one side. Then the bottom end of the tiller there can stick out to one side of the aft end of the keel and pick up a few weeds there. But if it's problematic, judicious use of the boat hook gets rid of them. So as you can see, it needs to have some slimy grimy done to the bottom here to get the summer's crud off it. But I refinished the boat back after getting it back in the mid-90s. It was kind of a red color similar to the undercoating all over, hence the burgundy canvas, and I kind of wanted it to look a little more nautical, so I went with the navy blue with the white waterline stripe and the red undercoating. But you can see how the previous owner had made this thing up for the bow to hold the mast at the front end. I've had to put a couple of new pieces of 2x4 in there, and then I had to make a new X frame here to hold the mast at the back, and that seems to do the trick. So what I'll be doing is padding anything that's sticking up sharp and putting the tarp over top of the mast, using it as my ridge pole. I'll show you another shots of that after I'm done. Now I have to open up the mooring cover and take out the sails. I keep them in an old freezer in the garage. Keeps the mice out of them. Call that my canvas locker. Just a quick shot of the aft end of the motor here. The little 4-horse 2-stroke I have pushes the dinghy along quite comfortably, and it can also be used to power the Nordica. This one would be overkill on the Nordica, as it is on the dinghy for that matter. Well, I've got the dinghy put to bed for the winter. That's all there is to it. Lots of fun flipping it over by myself, but it's good. What's not so good is the Nordica wasn't right where I wanted it. So rather than bring the truck in and whatnot, I thought I'd try and jockey it around by hand, which this isn't a real heavy boat, but it's impossible to do on the small trailer wheels and soft ground. So I was mussing around with the jacks and everything, and it's fallen off. So the only answer now, hook up the truck. Captain G here again. One of the things that's, before putting the sails and the mooring cover and the sail cover for the boom into the sail locker is to try to ensure that everything's dry, and so you need a nice sunny breezy day to accomplish this task. That's what we've got this afternoon. So this is what I had on the deck of the Nordica all summer to keep the big 31 series Deep Cycle battery charged up, and I tried it here this afternoon, and it's struggling because it's only 10 watts. On the other hand, I now have this one hooked to the battery behind it. It's a 100 watt panel, and wow, there's a major difference. It's charging up beautifully with that. And yes, to play it safe, I have the converter. It's not a converter, regulator here on the 100 watt panel. Don't need that with a 10 watt, but certainly do with a 100 watt. At the moment it's bouncing between 13.4, 13.5 volts input to the battery. Hope the camera picks this up, but it's showing 12.8 volts output from the battery, while still hooked up to the panel at the moment, of course. The dark brown piece of plywood on top here is the cover, the hatch cover going between the cockpit and the cabin on the Nordica. As you can see on the bottom, it's showing its age and starting to splinter just from a bit of water damage over the years. This cover has been in there since I've had the Nordica, since the mid-90s. I'm not sure what the original hatch cover would have looked like, so I can't give you any information on that. But my oldest grandson had a chunk of plywood left over from a job and gave it to me, so I'll make a new cover for it in time for next spring. So when I finished off yesterday afternoon, I wanted to have the boat fully covered before nightfall, with dew and everything falling, and possibility of critters and lots of leaves falling into it, sort of a thing, because leaves, the tannins in the leaves can stain the light colored decks and whatnot. So I just did a temporary hookup, which looks like everything has survived the night okay. So this afternoon's project will be to button it up tight at both the bow and stern, so that neither the bigger critters nor the little ones are likely to work their way inside and make a mess of things. So that's what this afternoon's project holds. Well, I think I've finally got the job completed for this winter, and when I put this tarp back on, it's only the second year I've used it. It's looking a little sketchy, so it certainly won't get through another winter. It's the one heavy duty one, silver outside, black inside. I have another brand new one in the package. It's possible I'll have to break it out midwinter. I'm hoping not, though. It's hard to get more than one good season out of one of these tarps, I find. 2 is absolute max. Several years ago, when we winterized our 31-foot cruiser, power cruiser, for the first time, one of the guys at the boat club recommended that we use these tie downs here, Tarp Clips, to zip up the tarp, and as you can see, it's almost like a zipper, and that's what my wife and I call it. They work really well, and we've used them now for a number of years, and I can recommend it to you, quite honestly, that it's a good way to do it. Now, I use these jugs. I've done this for a number of years on just on the sailboat, not on the big boat. And the trick is you don't fill them all the way, and you leave the caps loose so that the air can get out as the water turns to ice and expands. But that's it for the moment. Now I'm on to the next project, which is dismantling our outdoor lockdown, social distancing summer visitation spot. This has worked out very well for us. We had these 2 tents, and I was able to get the screening for them. They're just from Walmart, but they're easy up, easy down, and the screening has worked out wonderfully for us here in mosquito country. I don't know if you can see it or not, but we have a couple of sets of Edison lights that we invested in, so we can light it up really well at night, and it's very inexpensive on the power bill. So the 2 together have worked very well. I've had those tarp clips I was just showing you. I had the 2 tents joined together there so that it minimized how many raindrops would fall down. But this has worked out really well. So as I said, we've had the propane fire bowl here. This one is Outland. They're made in British Columbia, and it has worked out really well. It's surprising on a cool evening with that going in here on low, not high, just on low, that the mosquito mesh netting has kept an amazing amount of heat on, so we could keep visiting well after dark and be comfortable in terms of temperature. Now I'll wrap up with telling you more about these tarp clips. This is kind of what they look like. You just turn the knob to tighten or loosen them. And the first ones I bought were from Tractor Supply Company, TSC, here in Ontario. But the absolute best price is if you're in the US, you can pick them up at Harbor Freight for much less cost. So that's my recommendation if you can get them there. That's a 4-pack. I think that was only around $5 US or so. So that was better than $2 or $3 Canadian each, buying them that way. So my recommendation, Harbor Freight. I think that's it for this video, and it's been a pretty good season in spite of lockdowns and whatnot, and the fall colors are just about over. The trees are losing their leaves, and we'll soon see things covered with white stuff. Then it'll be time to kickstart the snowblower. Cap'n G from Mississippi Lake, out.